good to have you with us on this Friday evening. I'm Daniel Che for Arirang News. Let's start with the headlines. Fire and ice, it could not be more different between the rival parties. Conflicting reaction as the ruling Saenuri party publicly apologizes to the president regarding the push for revisions to a parliamentary law, while the opposition demands, among other things, an apology from the president for disregarding the National Assembly. Systematic, widespread and gross human rights violations, which constitutes crimes against humanity. The U.S. government lowers its assessment of North Korea's human rights record. 260 people are released from quarantine. 81 have fully recovered from MERS, while 2 patients died, but both of them were 79 and 80 years old and were suffering from pre-existing ailments. Ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Seong-min has publicly apologized to the president for the latest political upheaval over revisions to a controversial parliamentary bill. A day after President Park vetoed the revised parliamentary bill, even accusing the floor leader of doing politics for personal interests. Yu said he was sorry, but that he, of all people, earnestly hopes for the success of the president and her administration. The president said the bill, which would have given parliament power to request changes to ordinances, could be unconstitutional. The Saenuri floor leader also vowed to normalize the party's relations with the presidential office and the government. But ruling party lawmakers close to the president are pressuring Yu to step down. And there is speculation some members of the party's Supreme Council may withdraw, which will deal a blow to the party leadership. However, on the other end of the spectrum, the leader of Korea's main opposition party slammed President Park Geun-hye's decision to veto the revised parliamentary law. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
In a public address on Friday morning, chairman of the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, Moon Jae-in, accused the presidential office of fueling political strife. He said now is the time for the president to apologize for the government's poor initial handling of the MERS outbreak, instead of disregarding the National Assembly and threatening democracy. He added that the president's veto violates the spirit of the Constitution as it infringes on the National Assembly's legislative duties.
It's a direct attack on the parliament's legislative power. The administration is attempting to manipulate the law and reign over the assembly. It is a violation of the Constitutional, which stipulates division of powers. It's unacceptable.
The floor leader of the main opposition party also said on Friday that the veto law was agreed upon by both parties.
It began with the implementing ordinances of the special Sewol-ho ferry law, which violated the core elements of the special ferry law. The vetoed law represents the will of the parliament to change the situation. Both rival parties agreed on the bill.
The revised parliamentary law that sparked a standoff between the assembly and the presidential office allows the parliament to request modification of executive ordinances that are not in accordance with the original law. The floor leader of the Liberal Party stressed that the Assembly made clear that its request for changing the ordinances was merely a suggestion and not legally binding, presenting no real threat to administrative power. However, he accused the presidential office of causing unnecessary political wrangling by using inappropriate terms like unconstitutional and administrative paralysis. The main opposition party has declared an all-out boycott of assembly activities until Parliament holds a revote. Subsequently, all of Friday's scheduled standing committee meetings have been cancelled. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Let's shift our focus to the latest on the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome here in Korea. One more case was confirmed today, lifting the tally to 181. 2 patients with pre-existing ailments passed away overnight. The health ministry says the latest confirmed MERS patient is a 26-year-old doctor at Samsung Medical Center that treated patient 135 earlier this month. The 2 deceased patients were aged 79 and 80 and were already suffering from diabetes and bladder cancer. The fatality rate now stands at 17.1%, with about 93% of the deceased being high-risk patients with pre-existing illnesses. The number of quarantines seemed to be in the decline, but rose to more than 2,900, while some 260 people were released from quarantine today. 81 patients have fully recovered from MERS. All but 13 patients undergoing treatment are in a stable condition. As for the patient who flew to China prior to his MERS diagnosis, Chinese health officials have informed Korea that he has fully recovered from the disease and was discharged from the hospital Friday morning. China barred the cost of the treatment, which totaled more than $1 million. The United States has labeled North Korea's human rights record among the worst in the world. Washington's worst ever assessment of Pyongyang's treatment of its people shows it took a key UN report on the issue into account. Our Connie Kim has this report.
The U.S. government has lowered its already grim assessment of North Korea's human rights record, saying the regime's treatment of its people remains among the worst in the world. The U.S. State Department's country reports on human rights practices for 2014 released on Thursday said the regime commits systematic, widespread, and gross human rights violations, and such violations constitute crimes against humanity. A U.S. official says Washington will continue to shine the spotlight on the North's abuses.
We are doing everything we can to try to get knowledge and information to the people of North Korea so that this trend continues.
The report reveals stories of public executions and unimaginable torture, such as locking prisoners in a tiny room for weeks on end. And parts were gleaned from the UN Commission of Inquiry's report, hinting that Washington had taken that report into consideration for the first time. The UN's 370-page report published last February outlined the regime's human rights abuses, including torture and arbitrary imprisonment. It also recommended the regime's leadership, including Kim Jong-un, be referred to the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. For years now, Washington's assessment of North Korea's human rights record has consistently been labeled as grim, deplorable, and poor. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The group of eminent persons for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty has urged North Korea to sign the treaty banning nuclear tests. Wrapping up their two-day meeting in Seoul on Friday, the group adopted a so-called Seoul Declaration. In it, Pyongyang is called on to sign and ratify the treaty and refrain from further nuclear testing. The CTBT was opened for signature in 1996, but has yet to come into force because countries with nuclear capabilities, including North Korea, Iran, and the United States, have not signed the deal. The members of the group include former chief of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Hans Blix, and former British Defense Secretary, Des Brown. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe remains ambiguous regarding its past colonization of Korea. Speaking at the Diet on Friday, Abe said Tokyo acknowledges its imperialistic colonization and that the country as a whole upholds the Murayama Statement, a landmark apology for Japan's actions during World War II. However, without any further mention of regret for its imperialistic colonization, the Prime Minister said that it should be the historians that deal with history. Abe is set to release a statement in August marking the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II, but whether he will include words of remorse or apology for his country's wartime atrocities remains to be seen. Korea and Japan have wrapped up a two-day meeting in Geneva discussing Seoul's import ban on Japanese fish products. The talks failed to produce an agreement, however, as Korea rejected Tokyo's request to lift restrictions. For details, let's turn to our Gwangju.
Korea and Japan continue to disagree on the safety issues regarding Japanese fisheries, which has been ongoing more than 4 years now. This traditional fish market in Seoul was one of the places affected most by Japan's nuclear disaster in 2011.
The effects of radiation don't appear until 5, 10, 15, or 20 years after eating contaminated food. Wouldn't you be afraid?
Things improved for the domestic fish market after the Korean government's ban of fish imports from 8 prefectures near the Fukushima nuclear plant. However, with Japan taking the issue to the World Trade Organization, concerns are mounting that Seoul will concede Tokyo's request to lift the restrictions. After the two-day meeting, Korea's trade, fisheries, and food ministers merely reaffirmed their stance that the ban is necessary for people's safety and asked their Japanese counterparts for clear information about the crippled nuclear plant. Japan claims that Korea is violating the WTO's SPS, or Sanitary and Phytosanitary Agreement, claiming lack of scientific explanation. Korea denied the claim, but experts say both countries need stronger data to solve the issue.
The argument will prolong for some time. Technical discussions are required on issues like the degree of water contamination, since even Japanese citizens remain concerned.
It's now likely that a WTO settlement panel will be charged with putting an end to the dispute, which could last at least a year, or, according to Korean officials, possibly up to 8 years. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Let's shift gears now. Jeju Island, arguably the most convenient and popular local vacation destination, is looking for support to digitalize its tourism contents and make it more accessible to visitors. Our Song Ji-sun takes a look at the government's plans to open an innovation center to help cater to that need.
Judging from its annual growth of 60%, Jeju Island is attracting more and more visitors. With over 12 million tourists visiting last year, Jeju is now a more popular destination than even Hawaii or Bali. However, its tourism programs need to evolve. Most contents remain offline in the form of tour pamphlets and have yet to be transferred to online databases. Thus, the government is trying to reboot Jeju Island. A new innovation center will help set up a ubiquitous computing environment through beacons, utilizing location data. This means tourists can automatically receive discount coupons or information when approaching nearby businesses. The platform will be open to any developer that wishes to take part.
위치 기반 IT 서비스와 컨텐츠를 연계하고 지역 내 혁신 기관 네트워크를 통해서 제주를 관광 인력 육성과 관광 산업의 허브로 육성하고자 합니다. 제주 혁신센터에서는 관광의 질적 내실화를 위해 스마트 관광 기반을 구축하고 중국 관광객들에게 실시간 관광 콘텐츠와 빅데이터 분석을 통한 맞춤형 서비스를 지원하게 될 것입니다.
IT services required to develop applications will be provided by Dam Kakao, Korea's leading web portal which has called the island home for over a decade. It will also provide network of professionals in Northeast Asia, in line with the center's goal of catering to startups that lack access to human resources.
Many IT firms moved to Jeju Island following Daum Kakao, but it is hard for them to recruit experts because it's isolated from the mainland. We will establish a human resources database called Human Library to help.
With just 4 more centers set to open their doors, the government's map of creative economy centers is almost complete. On criticism that these centers are not serving their purposes just yet, the government says it will now focus on promoting these centers to let potential startups know about the services and support they can receive. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's biggest sporting event of the year is kicking off this time next week. It's the Gwangju Universiade, and it's drawing thousands of young athletes from around the world to Korea's southwestern city of Gwangju. Kim Hyun-bin shows us what to expect from that event.
Only a week remains before the 2015 Gwangju Universiade kicks off in Korea's southwestern city. The sporting extravaganza will be the largest in Universiade history, surpassing the previous record set at the 2013 event, when the Russian city of Kazan welcomed around 11,700 participants. Countries can register for the event all the way up to June 30th, but more than 13,000 athletes from 145 countries have already signed up for the event, which starts July 3rd. 65 sporting venues will be used for the various competitions, including 3 new stadiums built specifically for the Universiade, a multi-purpose gymnasium, swimming pool, and tennis stadium. The organizers say all the sporting facilities were constructed at a reasonable expense.
The government set our total budget at around $730 million, but we only spent $550 million, so we came in $181 million under budget. On top of this, the International University Sports Federation agreed for the first time in Universiade history to cover the entirety of our domestic marketing management costs. Thanks to that, we saved $90 million.
Sporting events of this magnitude never come cheap. But officials say the benefits to the city of Gwangju, the surrounding areas, and Korea as a whole make the outlay worth it.
The Bank of Korea says the Gwangju Universiade will bring in $90 million in direct economic effect thanks to the extra tourists coming in. Also, with a TV audience of 500 million in 100 countries, Korea's global position and awareness of our country will be enhanced.
The 12-day event, which starts next Friday, will see athletes compete in 21 different sporting categories for the total of 272 gold medals up for grabs. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Gwangju.
Today, June 26th, is United Nations International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, held to raise awareness of social problems caused by illicit drugs. A special ceremony was held at the National Assembly Library in Seoul to commemorate the day. The event was co-hosted by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety and the Korean Association Against Drug Abuse. Among the recipients recognized for their efforts, a pharmacist that has been involved in anti-drug campaigns and preventive education for decades, as well as a prosecutor responsible for investigating crimes to eradicate illegal drugs was involved. The Ministry of Food and Drug Safety said it will continue domestic and international cooperation to eradicate drug abuse and addiction in society. That's all for now. If you're punching out of work right now, have a great weekend. Do join us for our next newscast at 10 p.m. Korea time.